We're talking to Dene Logan, who is a marriage and family therapist. We're talking all things relationships, masculine and feminine energy, how to foster more love in your life, and much, much more. Let's dive in. You want blissful balance in your personal and professional life? Great. What's up, guys? My name is Carrie Jack, and I want to help you happy hustle a life you love, one full of passion, purpose, and positive impact. I'm a lifestyle entrepreneur, a professional model / actor, a digital marketing specialist, a podcast host, author, a biohacker, an eco warrior, a martial artist, a hippie cowboy, and a humanitarian. My goal is to educate, inspire, and entertain you to live a life of passion, purpose, and positive impact. It is time to happy hustle your dream reality. Yee! All right, Dene Logan, welcome to the Happy Hustle Podcast, my friend. I am super excited to rock the mic with you.
Aw, thanks, Carrie Jack. I'm so excited too. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we are talking all things love and relationships today because you are a licensed marriage and family therapist, a group facilitator, you're an author based in Los Angeles, and you utilize your background in depth of psychology to infuse archetypes, ritual, and metaphysics into the exploration of how each of us can reclaim the aspects of our authentic selves that we've culturally conditioned to turn away from in an attempt to maintain attachments. And we're talking all things love. You have your new book, Sovereign Love, A Guide to Healing Relationships by Reclaiming the Masculine and Feminine Within, which is available now on your website. And you have an awesome social media following that you put out amazing content. You do retreats and you have a podcast and courses and, all things to just serve and impact lives. And, one of our 10 alignments of being a happy hustler is loving relationships. We have our soul system. This is your soul's map to the blissfully balanced promised land. And, the L in soul mapping is loving relationships. And oftentimes, I know you probably see this in your work as well, is there's those out there who have quote unquote success, maybe financially or materialistically, but not fulfillment with their family, their friends, or their relationships. And it's not really happy hustling. They're not super joyous or stoked with their reality. So I'm very excited about this topic and to go into the different energies, the masculine, the feminine, where we are getting it wrong with such a high divorce rate and how we can fix it, right? Before we get into all that good stuff, Dene, what is something interesting about yourself that not too many people know?
Oh, well, it's
Curveball.
funny because I was talking to you about you being in Montana before we pressed record, and I think not a lot of people know that I rode horses for like 10 years of my life, and I love horses, and I still think often about how to get back in a space where I have horses around me on a daily basis. So yeah, I feel like that's not something most people know, but yeah, horses have been like one of the great loves of my life.
I love horses too. They really are like, no offense to people, but I would hang with horses more than people. True story. What
They're
kind of
so
horses did you
brilliant
ride?
and intuitive, and I rode hunter jumpers and did like 3-day eventing, and so I think I started fairly young, and there were so many times when my first horse was just like one of those horses that like wouldn't be around anyone but me as a little girl. He would come galloping in the field towards me when I would come to see him every day, and he would save me. He would keep me safe when I would be, out in the woods doing things I shouldn't have been doing that weren't safe, but he would like hold me down. And so like, I'm just like, I think horses are brilliant, and there's so much around PTSD and our healing process that horses can be really supportive of through equine therapy. And I just, could go on. That's like a whole thing in and of itself,
I got a bunch of cowboy buddies who do equine therapy for CEOs and leaders and entrepreneurs in Idaho, and a bunch of cowboy buddies here who just are straight up Western. They'll do all sorts of crazy stuff from rodeo to my buddy, One-Eyed Cowboy Duncan, shout out to him. He will ski behind a horse's tail and in thin water, just smack it on the ass and just hold on to the tail and barefoot ski behind a horse full gallop. It's pretty next level.
But levels of dangerous that
oh, I know.
God, that's
Oh, yeah. He
I'm
does all
like,
the
"God, I wanna
movies
see
out
a
here.
video."
Yeah, he does the movies and, like, he's big into, you know, that whole world where he helps, like, just, you know, performance horses to do all sorts of cool tricks for camera.
Mm.
Anyway, we're going down the rabbit hole that
Right,
I wanna
right?
talk
We
about
could just
love
go
and relationships. So,
Right.
let's kick things off with the biggest misconception. I always wanna just
Mm.
start off with a bang. The biggest misconception between masculine and feminine energy and, you know, specifically in modern day relationships, like, where are we misunderstanding this yin and yang of these two relationship dynamics?
Yeah, I love that as a place to start off, Carrie Jack, because I think there's a lot about the conversation around masculine and feminine energetics and the cultural zeitgeist that as I hear it, I'm like, go, "Ugh, yeah, I don't love
Mhm.
that, right? And mostly it's because it can be a little bit putting us back in boxes and really sort of like in the space of gender roles. And if you want to be a masculine man, then this is how you need to show up and behave. And, as a woman, if you want to be in your feminine, then you need to do this. And I think a lot of times the biggest misconception to me is that all of us, regardless of how we identify in terms of gender, have both masculine and feminine energetics within us. And from my perspective, and a lot of what I talk about in my book is our work is to really be in right relationship with those energetics within ourselves so that we're not
Mm,
really looking in our partnerships to do so much of that, like outsourcing my feminine if I'm a man from my partner, outsourcing my masculine if I'm a woman. And, a lot of these things are nuanced and they can be tough to talk about because it's like multiple truths at the same time, and that like not every woman identifies as a core feminine woman, and same with men. But there's so much around the way that we are socialized around gender that I started to realize working with couples over time was making it really, really difficult for us to have actual fulfillment in our relationships.
mm. Yeah, very difficult. You know, I got it really wrong in my
Mm,
marriage when it comes to
mm,
masculine and feminine dynamics. My wife, specifically, shout out to her, Steph, you know, she's a great mirror for me. She loves to point out
mm,
all my imperfections. She does, you know, and that's, I think, what a partner often does for us, but
yeah.
in a healthy way. It's just, you know, she's recently, since we've had our, you know, our baby, she had him, I didn't have him, but you know, I helped.
Well, I was
So
like, you're a vital part of the process.
yeah, all 4.5 minutes of it, I helped though. No, I'm
Aw.
kidding. But the point is, she was like, "I need you to be, step into your masculine." And I was like, "What do you mean
Mhm,
step into your masculine?" I was like, I drive a, you know, F-350 truck. I hunt. I fish. I protect
mhm,
you. I do what, you know. I take the garbage out. I pay the bills. I do all the masculine stuff. She's like, no, I need you to be um, reliable and
mm,
emotionally available and, you know, trusting and putting me first over your family and stuff like, you know, that. And I was like, oh,
mhm.
that's masculine too. So I felt like I just got the definition very wrong, or at least there's
Yeah,
this difference in definitions of masculine and feminine. Can you start by just defining terms there?
sure. Yeah, I think I often say that we live in a wounded, and I'm saying wounded quite intentionally, a wounded masculine culture, and that a lot of the ideas that we have of what masculinity are sort of distortions of masculinity. Masculinity and masculine energy are just beautiful and so necessary. And a lot of times, what we're thinking of as masculinity, it's being called toxic or a bad thing because we aren't really talking about what masculinity is. So I talk about wounded and healthy masculine and feminine a lot of times. And when I think about what is wounded masculine energy, a lot of times that is like hyper productivity, afraid of fear,
Mm,
control, really like always needing to be right. And then wounded feminine energy is sort of anxious energy, believing I need something outside of myself to be whole, clinging, people pleasing, all of that energy of not like
mm.
having a solid sense of myself. And then healthy masculine energy, which I don't think we have a ton of models for what that looks like, is some of what you're describing your wife, Steph. Is that her name? Steph?
Yeah,
Is that right?
Steph.
What you're describing, Steph, speaking to, which is really like leadership and like a solid sense of this is who I am. I think of like the core tenet of healthy masculine energy for me is confidence. Like, I define myself for myself, regardless of what anyone else thinks about this. This is what is true for me. Like, I am who
Mm.
I am, right? And then healthy feminine energy is receptive energy, and it's trust in life, and it's my ability to go with the flow and not need to control and sort of be in that play and that receptive energy of like, I trust that the things that I'm meant to experience will come to me. And so I think it's a little bit all of us, again, regardless of gender, need to have those healthy qualities within us. But I do a lot of work around like, how do I identify where I am in terms of my energy so that I can bring myself back consciously into that space of a little bit of a healthier space? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Wow.
Mm,
For sure, I know what you mean. It's the calm confidence, I think, that men need to portray and to lead with that energy, not in
mhm,
an arrogant way, but in a peaceful way, right?
mhm.
In a way that maybe we have gone astray a little bit. I feel, correct me if I'm wrong, but ever since women started really working, full on,
Mhm.
like there was this relationship dynamic that changed where men went out and back to the tribal days. We would hunt and they would oftentimes gather and stay at home with the kids, and that it was just very clear delineation of roles. And
Yes.
then this delineation became muddied when women started really
Mm,
working and then taking more of a breadwinner approach as well. And
mhm.
sometimes they're stay-at-home fathers. And now I find with my marriage, I'll be open and honest as always. My wife runs a business, I run a business, and it's like, well, who's doing the home stuff? Are we
Yeah.
hiring that? Like, what's going on for that component? So, how have you seen in the modern day
Mm,
this dynamic with women and the rise of women? And I'm all about the rise of women. It's just, how do
yes.
you navigate those muddy waters of raising a family if both are doing both roles?
Yes, I love that you're bringing this up. It's so funny, Carrie Jack. I just came from a therapy conference where I was talking with a group of therapists about really what I see as the way that we need to approach men's mental health a little bit differently than we have been, and really from a much more compassionate stance around like what has been really confusing for men around like what is meant to be my role in this changing
Yeah.
world and dynamic and in relationships, and that we haven't had a lot of templates for what that's supposed to look like, right? And
Mm,
what you're speaking to is in a traditional patriarchal structure, the roles were clearly defined in that a man was meant to be dependent on a woman and his family for his meaning, for his life force, and a woman was meant to be dependent on her man for economic security, right? And safety in that way. Now,
mm.
as you're speaking to, as women have become a little bit more financially viable and independent, hallelujah, in many ways, it has really sort of created challenging dynamics in terms of what are our roles, in terms of the ways that we're meant to interact with one another. And,
Mm,
I think men are sort of given this protect, provide, procreate template, in terms of where I believe like they're taught to believe your value resides in your ability to do that well. Now that's
mm,
all well and good if I have someone here to protect, to provide for, and to procreate with. If I don't have that, or if I feel like somehow I am not doing a good job at that, I find it can really be challenging for the male psyche to process. And I don't know if you've heard about or seen this show on Netflix called Adolescence, but I feel like
mm,
certainly every parent needs to watch it. But
mm.
I think anyone who cares about men and how men are doing in terms of their mental health really needs to watch it. It was so challenging and heartbreaking to watch, but really important. And what it speaks to me, is a lot of what happens in a society where we teach men to reject their own feminine and to really
Mm,
not be in relationship with all of those aspects of who they are outside of that 3P procreate, protect, and provide template. That men are so much more than that, right? And we sort of have lived in a societal structure where without that woman in your life, I think men can feel a little bit, I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing. And we're living in a time where I hear so many women, and I'm curious kind of to hear your thoughts on this as I say it, but I hear women say, I don't need a man. I would like a man a lot of times, but I don't need one. And I will hear men say that that feels like a rejection of men, like you hate men. And I think that being seen as the equivalent is a little bit problematic because I would love my dream for my brothers is for them to say, well, I don't need a woman either. I would love a woman in my life, but I don't need one to feel whole. But I don't feel like that's where
Mm.
we are right now societally. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I have heard that, where women say, "I don't need a man. I can do it myself." Like my wife sometimes, she's very much girl power, like boss biatch, and I'm like,
Mm,
"Okay, I want to honor you and you to achieve all your dreams. However, I
mm,
also want to, have this traditional
mhm.
mother in a sense as well, so it's like
Yeah.
this pull. um I think, to be frank, both men and women need each other. That's how God
Mm,
designed us,
mhm.
and I don't think it's anything wrong with that.
Yeah.
I don't think we need each other to be whole individuals in that sense. Like you're talking more in a modern day woke culture sense. I'm not about that per se. I just think we obviously need each other to enhance the species forward in evolution,
Well,
right?
we need one another to procreate, certainly, but I think, the
Right.
challenge with that a lot of times, and even if you look back at our ancestry, there have always been more women than men. Like, there were not as many, women for men to all have a woman even back and
Yeah.
it used to be men would be sleeping with multiple women because
True.
there were so many more women than men, and so
The good
I
old
think
days. No, I'm kidding.
but, I think the challenge is that there right now are a lot of men, like if we talk about like incel culture, men who are involuntarily celibate and really feeling challenged by like, I would like a woman and I can't find one and are feeling a lot of frustration around that. And what do we
Mm.
do for those of our brothers who are in that space? I guess is a lot of times my concern. You know what I mean?
Well, I think one thing, and this helped me on my journey. So I never claim to be the guru of shit, Dene. I just am like the reporter of, hey, here's what's worked for me in my life, and
I
maybe
love
take
it.
it if it works for you. I
Mm.
even talk about this in my book, shameless plug. I go through this this whole exercise that I did when I was basically at a very low point. I was giving away my chi energy to just anyone,
Mm.
spreading my seed all over the world, you know,
Yes.
focused on just having fun, partying, women, just not being like not being proud of who that person was. I
Mm.
came back and I actually voluntarily was celibate,
Mhm.
and I focused on myself and just becoming the 10 that I seek in someone else. And what I
Yes.
did was I wrote down my perfect partner. And I know this is an exercise that maybe is not, um, all that unique, but for me, it was at the time to just get crystal clear on exactly who I wanted to attract. And I'm talking to the T, every single thing from the
Mm.
morals to the beliefs to what she smelt like to what her family was like to the dreams, and wouldn't you know it, the woman who I wrote down
Mm.
largely manifested in my wife, Steph. Now we have plenty of shit. We definitely do. We've had plenty of walk away moments. We just haven't walked away. I think
Mm.
relationship grit is such a pivotal piece in modern day
Mm.
relationships that many people don't have. And yes, there is a time to walk away, which I want to talk to you about that because I know you were in a 12-year marriage and then, you guys peacefully co-parent now.
Changed form,
Um,
yes.
right, changed form. But the truth is, that perfect partner page, I think, is the answer largely.
Mm.
And also, this one saying that just vibrates throughout my whole being. And this is big into our happy hustle ethos, which is if you want a 10, you have to be a 10. And I don't think a lot of people out there seeking a counterpart are the 10 that they desire. And so, of course, there's a frequency imbalance. Thoughts?
I'm like, I feel like I wanna
Okay,
I
I'll give you a
love
fist bump.
they I'm like, "Yes, can I like fist bump you through the screen?" I love everything you're saying so much. And, what's fascinating to me is there is something about the celibacy piece. I think it's like it becomes like a giant timeout, and this is like across the board for everybody to
Yeah.
come into yourself. And a lot of times, to me, that is the integration of my feminine because I go
Mm.
inward and the feminine is like the internal, right? And I get
Yep.
right in right relationship with source, God, whatever feels true or aligned for you. And I sort of say, like, what do I want for this life? Who do I want to be? Right. And I get
Mhm.
in right relationship with that as you're speaking to, with like, if I want a 10, whatever that means for me, I got to be that thing. And then I believe that's when we come into that receptive feminine energy. Um, and we're able to manifest anything that we're meant to experience. In your case, it was your beautiful relationship with Steph. But I think that there's a way that we sort of are putting the cart before the horse a lot of times relationally, and
Mm.
we're attempting to find someone. As much as we don't want to admit that this is the truth, it is the truth that we're looking for someone to complete us when we don't really know who we are.
Mm.
And so I love that. Thank you for that, brother. I think more men normalizing that, like, it's a really important step for men to be in relationship with themselves first so they know why they want what they want and what they deserve for themselves. I think that that's like, there's two things that I think we don't give enough credit, and that's like a man who knows himself well and has a strong sense of self is so unbelievably attractive to women, but also a man with sexual discipline is so
Mm.
unbelievably attractive to women. And that's something that like nobody talks about, but that I see
Mm.
come up in relationship dynamics so much. And that's
Yeah.
just some of what I think you're speaking to in that process.
Yeah, for sure. Sexual discipline. Just to be clear, when I was doing that celibacy, stint, I
Hmm.
didn't even jack off. Like it was just completely, I know
Mm,
this is personal, but this is the truth. Like I
mhm.
was retaining all my chi energy, no porn,
Yeah.
no nothing. And it's
Yeah.
just focused on, again, retaining all that energy to focus on thyself. And I think porn
Beautiful.
really fucks things up these days, for lack of a
Oof.
better term. What's
That's
your
a
take on
whole
this epidemic?
epidemic is the correct word. I cannot tell you the extent to which nobody's talking about, that there's a real crisis with men and an addiction to porn. The most researched search in like the search engine last year was like, how do I quit using porn? Men are
Mm,
self-regulating through porn constantly and are not leaving the house to be in relationship with people. And like the younger generation, I don't know, I was looking at some Pew Research numbers, but like they are not partnering, they are not in the space of even dating, because a lot of
yeah.
times the women are feeling like there's just no men that are aligned with, what they are hungry for. But a lot of times in men's case, it's because they're getting whatever those quote needs are met through pornography at home, and it's a problem.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a big problem. I think it's going to be more problem when people start banging robots too.
That part.
That's like there's like these sex dolls that are very
Yeah,
realistic. And then, I
exactly.
mean, I'm going to be straight up. Like if you have someone who will just you can bang all the time and there's no nagging involved, it sounds kind of good, right?
Yeah,
But it's
I
very
mean,
unhealthy. Like, you know what I mean? These robots, like this is a real thing for the record. Look it up. If like there's these real
oh, yeah.
women robot sex dolls things that I'm like, wow, this is the end of the species if we don't fix it, you know?
Well, we are in a moment of evolve or die time as a human species. It's real. What Eckhart Tolle was talking about is actually the times that we're living in, and we're
Yeah.
at like AI is in its infancy. So if you think about what they already in, I think Japan are creating in terms of what you're
Yeah.
talking about, these robots that are lifelike, they're going to get so much more advanced and feel like human beings and look so similar that you're not going to be able to tell that they're not human beings. And so for me, and I know that you do this work and it's become something I'm so passionate about, I think we do need to get back in the space of really celebrating and prioritizing what is differentiating about our human experience back in nature, back in community with one another,
Mhm.
back in sitting in circles and really attempting to know one another as human animals and
Mm.
valuing that in a way that I think it is crucial for us to do in this moment in history.
Whoa, whoa, whoa. Apologies for interrupting your programming, but I have to tell you the best investment you can make in yourself is one in which helps you acquires skills. You've probably heard people talk about, oh, just invest in yourself and you'll be successful. Yes, that's true to a degree, but you have to invest in skills that will ultimately help you achieve your desired results. And I think one of the best skills one can possess, be it an entrepreneur or an aspiring entrepreneur, is the sales sword. Really knowing how to sell, utilizing pressure free persuasion, which will make you more money and more impact. Now, if you want to know how to sell more efficiently and effectively, I just launched a sales course called The Proven Roadmap Process to Selling Millions of Dollars and Helping You to Increase Your Conversions Guaranteed. And you can get access to this new sales course that the Happy Hustle is launching at thehappyhustle.com/sales. And if you act fast, you'll get it at the lowest price it'll ever be available because we are launching it and we want to gain amazing testimonials and social proof to further share this knowledge. So if you act fast, you can get it at the lowest price it'll ever be. That's at thehappyhustle.com/sales. Now let's get back to this episode. Yeah, and to your point, I mean that is why I think in-person masterminds, retreats, live events, I know
Mhm.
you host them, I host them. This is where
Yeah,
the magic happens. The more technology inundates our everyday reality, the more we need human connection. We need to be connected to nature, a part of nature as we were designed by God, right? And
that's it.
it's sad to see, but most people spend 99% of their time indoors, breathing in recycled air, soaking up toxic blue light, getting beamed by electromagnetic fields. And we wonder why we feel like shit, why we're obese,
Mm.
why we're not feeling connected to, source energy. It's we're living unnaturally. And just, this relationship dynamic now is suffering as a result, I think, as well. Where do we go from here? What's the first step? Someone out there listening, like, wow, they're really going all over the damn place, Dene. But let's get let's get some tactical things for people who maybe, let's say, there's someone out there who is seeking a
Mm.
counterpart right now. What's your advice to someone in the modern day dating realm who is seeking a counterpart? Where would they start to really attract that person?
Yeah. I feel like my advice is counterintuitive, but it's very similar to what you were saying. I feel like the dating apps are gonna come for me, Carrie. But I'm
Yeah.
very like, I think a lot of that is problematic because I think there's so many
Hmm.
ways it's just become so unbelievably dehumanizing. And I don't know about you, but I've never like fallen in love with someone because of how they look. It's normally the attraction to the person when I'm in their energy and their presence and
Mm.
who they are. And I think we've just lost so much of that in this like constant swiping of people like their baseball cards and I think people are really disenchanted and starting to feel like they just want to opt out altogether. And I would say, great, that's probably an intuitive urge that you're feeling when you want to opt out. So maybe focus on what you said, which is bringing your energy back inward and focusing on the type of person and the type of partner you would want to be and let
Mm.
yourself attract that. But I think beyond that, how do we build community with less attachment to the outcome, right? So if
Mm.
I am hungry to, I don't know, maybe have a partner that does like, let's say I love camping, right? Like, how can I be in community with people that love camping without such a focus on like, I need to find the one as I'm doing this, but more like, I just want to have experiences, excuse me, with like-minded seekers who love to do something similar to what I love to do and
Mm.
trust that it'll find me. But I think that there's a way we need to stop believing that I can control this process of what I believe is a lot more divine and, that there's a divine orchestration in all of it than we've been
Mm.
conditioned to believe, as you were describing so beautifully before.
Yeah, it really is putting yourself in those situations, those environments to foster connection and community
Mhm.
detached from the outcome, really just, I know it's cliche AF, but it's like giving value to others and like watch what comes back to you. You might
That's
meet
right.
someone from the person who you just gave value to by them making a connection to their friend or something of the sort. It's just
Mm.
living in that space. There's so many takers out there and you could just smell them, you could sense them. And it's like, I'd rather hang out with givers. That's so largely who the
Mm.
happy hustlers are in our high level community. And those people, you want to connect them with people, you want to
Mm,
refer them out, you want to send them business. And I think, to your point, it's becomes very dehumanized through these portals, and we need to get back to
mhm,
that connection. So I love that. Let's kind of take the same question but put it for married people, couples
okay.
out there, those who are in a relationship, in a serious relationship. How
Mm,
do we get back to each other? Let's say we have been
mm,
astray. Maybe there's angst, there's a decrease in intimacy, there is the to-do list is piled up, or as I say, the honey-do list is piled up, and you just can't check it all off, right?
yeah.
It's we're in a state of angst, we're in a state of disarray. I know you do a lot of deep work with couples in that, because I'm sure people aren't really raising their hand to work with Dene when everything's going peaches and cream, right? So you
Well,
probably see. Oh, maybe
yeah.
they do, maybe they do.
I mean, sometimes,
um,
but yeah, no,
Sometimes,
definitely.
but I'd say probably the majority of your clients come to you when there is some type of issue.
Mm,
Would that be a fair
yeah,
statement? Yeah.
absolutely.
So how do we
Yeah.
fix it?
How do we fix it, right? I, at a certain point, realized that there's a lot of the ways that we're conditioned to hold what a partnership is that end up really creating some of the challenges that people come to see me with. Now, I would say the most common challenges are certainly things around like, our finances and like the ways that we're communicating around that. But more than anything else, it has to do with our intimacy, our sex lives, and the ways that like either there's been some sort of a rupture, infidelity. People come to see me a lot when that happens, or
Mm,
I'm just like feeling like we've become like roommates, like we're raising kids, we're going through the motions, but there's just not a lot of what I describe as like eros, life force in our dynamic anymore. And a lot of that is we have, in again that wounded masculine culture that we live in, put a tremendous amount of emphasis on the structure, on the containment, on keeping this safe. That's the masculine. Not a lot of emphasis on the eros, the sensuality, the life force, the expansion. That's the feminine, right? So we
mm,
don't really value that societally. So we haven't put a lot of emphasis on how do you continue to cultivate that. Now, we have this idea that like once someone is my partner, they're mine, right? Like you're not going anywhere. We've locked this down. You're my person. And that can
mm,
be great in theory and in terms of that safety. But the trouble is, if you think about anything that's yours over time, you sort of get used to looking at it and it's not that,
mhm.
enticing anymore. And you start to take it for granted. And a lot of
Oh,
times feel entitled to its energy, which really doesn't a lot of times cultivate that eros, that arousal between two people, right? So I like to, make it sort of a mindfulness practice with the couples that I work with. How would you meet this person if they weren't yours, right? And really treating it like
mm,
a sacred gift to have this person in my life. Because as we were talking about, like not everyone has someone in their life. So if I treat it, this thing of having a partner as that, how would I meet you? And what I find is there's like these two core desires that men and women have, and it's different. And the core desire of the feminine is to be seen. And when I say to be seen, it's not like, oh, I see you and you're like a hot woman. It's I see you. I see who you are, the way you show up in
mm,
the world, all that you bring to our life and our kids. And I'm so like, oh, having this woman. Cause if you think about when you first are discovering a woman, you're seeing her. You're like, I want to get that. I want to like, and I'm really doing whatever I have to do in terms of swagger to like land the deal with this woman.
mhm,
But then the core relational desire of the masculine is to be trusted, that you believe in me, that you like who I am as your man. I sort of joke like every man that I work with, it's like he has this desire to be your knight in shining armor. Like you believe in him and you believe in who he is. And so if
mm,
we can, in our relationship dynamics, no matter how long we've been together, do that work to sort of be in service of that relational desire for the other and find a way to do that, then it just starts to shift the energy between us. So if I'm a man, if I can find a way to show my wife like that I see her and that I feel so lucky to be with her and that she's amazing and magnanimous and all of these things, all of a sudden, I promise you, brothers, like the energy will
Mm,
shift. And if I'm a woman and I just like focus on all the things my husband is doing right and why my man is amazing, and I'm so lucky to have a man like you, and like just giving him all of that positive reinforcement, I promise you the energy will shift. But it's like, we get
mm,
into that, like, I'll do it when he does it and all of that. But it's like, nope. I always say with couples, somebody's got to go first. So how do I take responsibility for like, I'll go first. I'll be the one to like really remember that I want my
mm,
partner to feel that?
Well said. Well said. Yeah, women desire to be seen and
Mm,
men desire to be trusted. I totally resonate with that. And I mean, it really is going all in
mm,
despite what they're doing. It's like, again, going back to that quote or our ethos, if you want a 10, you got to be a 10. Don't wait until they, do the things that you desire. You
mm,
lead in that regard and watch them elevate and support them in that process as well. I do want to ask about when it
mm.
may be time to walk away, because I feel like, you were married 12 years, you said, right? And you have an
Yeah.
8-year-old together.
Yes.
And that's a long time to be married. I'm going on 10 years to be married.
Mm,
And I just now feel like we're really starting to get our stride because it's been
mm,
rocky. It's like there's ups, there's downs, there's amazing high highs, and then there's low lows. That's just like, I don't know one person who has a perfect marriage. I don't, maybe you do, but like not
I
one
do
person, like
not.
yeah, yeah, every couple that I know has their shit. If they
Yeah.
say they don't, they're lying. So for you, why did you decide to,
Mm,
you know, change the format of the relationship, as you say?
yes.
And when do you recommend others do the same?
Well, I'm not gonna recommend anything on anyone's marriage. Y'all do you. No, I'm just joking. But
Okay.
I'm joking. But yeah, I think I really am obsessed with sort of challenging the relational narrative that we have, that when a relationship changes form. And I say that so intentionally because I don't believe that once we've ever been in relationship with someone, especially if we have kids together, that the relationship ends. We're forever changed by our connection. And I do believe that sometimes it's not in alignment anymore for two people to continue to journey forward in terms of what they both want out of a relationship dynamic. And I often say that I think for a relationship to have fulfillment, it requires three components, and that's inspiration,
Mm,
respect, and a shared vision. And I think there will be seasons of our relationship where it doesn't feel like all three components are present. But if it feels like fundamentally those three things are really hard for us to find in an extended period, it's hard. And I think when it comes to my relationship with my kid's dad, who I love to say, he is ultimately one of the absolute loves of my life. He's still my best friend. And there was a way that we just realized that we didn't have a shared vision in terms of the things that we
mm,
wanted out of life and relationship anymore. And I think it's really important to challenge that, the idea that that means that anybody's failed, because we're really conditioned to think that when relationships end or change form, that it's a failure. And I just don't believe that's true. I think it would be a failure if my child saw us not getting along well and believed that he
mm,
came from anything other than two people who love and respect each other so deeply. Then maybe we're failing at something, but that's not the case. But I think that loving someone, to me, my definition of love has really shifted over, especially like the last 5 years. And it means, to me, love is your soul is safe with me. And I want you
mm,
to do everything that you came into this life to do and experience and become. And I don't ever want to stand in the way of that. So if it's not in alignment for us to journey together, then I want that for you. And I think
mm,
that to me is how I knew my child's father and I love each other so purely, because we both wanted that for one another. And so, to answer the question, how do you know? I think most people do know when this isn't true. A lot of times, I think a lot earlier than we're really being honest with ourselves, but it
mm,
becomes what you said. I always say, like, bring the focus back to you. keep doing your work, and the relationship will either rise to meet you in who you're becoming, or I believe it sort of changes form as it's meant to. And normally there are things that sort of divinely orchestrate that. But a lot of times it means we need to be really honest and have conversations that we're scared to have because we're attempting to maintain the attachment. And so, what is the brave thing that I'm not saying? And maybe that person is able to meet you there, and maybe you're able to evolve into something
Mm,
over time that it hasn't been, but we got to talk about it and be brave in those
mm,
conversations to figure it out.
mm. Wow, I love that. So the three things that a aligned relationship need
Mm,
to possess: inspiration, respect, and a shared vision to
yes.
foster that love, which, as you define it, as your soul is safe with me.
Mm,
Mm,
yes.
well said. That's some good
Thank you.
stuff. And I do
Thank you.
think, you know, my take personally is the grass is greener where you water it.
Mm.
Oftentimes people are looking at Cindy Lou Who and Joe Smo on Instagram, who put only the highlight reel of their trip to Cabo, but don't show
Mm,
the fight when they checked in or all the drama at dinner. It's like, it's not reality. And so you can aspire to this false sense of reality in another counterpart or another couple, excuse me. And then you foster this compare and despair, which, as I think T Rob says, comparison is the thief of joy, right?
yes.
So, how do
Yeah.
you navigate those waters?
Yeah, I love that. And the thing is, like, I really believe that I don't agree with the idea that relationships are meant to be a life sentence and that we just sort of are like sticking out something that is making both of us miserable. Now, I heard Meryl Streep say something once that was so smart that I bring into couples work a lot of times. And she said, like, whenever she was disenchanted or unhappy with her husband, if she got really honest with herself, usually she wasn't really happy about what was going on with her and where she was in
Mm,
her own life and her own career, like, bringing again the focus back to myself. And I think a lot of times we project that stuff on our partner.
mm,
And I was certainly guilty of doing that. I think it's a very human thing that we do. It's like, if this person would just change this, and this, then I could be happy. And normally it's like, you're projecting whatever's going on with you a lot of times on that person. But also, I think it's like, if we are just not able to treat one another with that respect, if it feels impossible to find that reverence for this other human soul, then sometimes I do think, and I say with couples, like, we've got to be honest, like, what are we doing here? If this is like the ugh, least generous version of myself, and who I want to be is who I show up as in this dynamic.
mm,
Certainly with myself, I got to get curious about why. But honestly, that, like, I think we got to put down the idea that longevity means success in relationships, because as someone who works with a lot of
mm,
couples, I just don't find that to be true. And I think that
mm,
sometimes, the success is saying, I like, let's let each other be free. And my kiddo's dad, has had a few relationships, but the relationship that he's in now is so unbelievably aligned and beautiful. And I adore her. And it's like, I think we should want that for one another if it isn't true in terms of where we are. You know what I mean?
yeah, yeah, very interesting. So, longevity doesn't equal success in your mind per se, because the work you've
Mm.
seen, I'm sure you've seen lots of unhappy couples who are just sticking it out, right?
Yeah.
And I do think, again, there's like this unspoken line
Mm.
that you don't necessarily know if you crossed it or not when you're in a relationship, if it's healthy or not, or to what degree of each. There's like,
Mhm.
it's so ambiguous. So it's difficult for those out there, I'm sure, watching and listening, maybe can empathize that, like, you've been in past relationships, or maybe you're in one currently where you're like, well, isn't this? I don't know, because,
Mm.
humans have this negativity bias where it takes eight actual positive things to counteract one negative. That's why the news
Mhm.
crushes with all the toxic shit they put out there.
Yes.
And, what I found in my marriage, to be helpful is this love calendar. And I talk about this in
Mm,
the book, but like we actually keep track of our love every month. We have strayed a little bit since the baby, but we would legit just write down a score every evening. Hey, where are you at today? 10 is lots of love, sex, plentiful
mm,
pleasure, just, connection. One is, completely like angst, despair, adversity.
yeah.
And if she said a 6 and then I said an 8, well, we would average it at a 7. Then I'd put a heart around it for that day on the whiteboard, in our
Mm,
room that has the calendar. It's this love calendar. And then at the end of the month, we could say, oh, you know what? We're 85% hearts instead of, if the score averaged below a 5, then we put an X. And that way you could see with real perspective, because again, if you don't
mm,
do the dishes, gentlemen, you got to do 8 more positive things to get back in good graces.
mm.
Maybe the stat is shifted at 1 or 2 difference on either side. I don't know how many exactly it takes nowadays, but I was told 8. So, what's your take on like this negativity bias that is at play for human beings?
Yeah, I mean, I think everything you're saying makes a lot of sense, and I think that's why a lot of what I do is mindfulness work and really
Mm,
trying to be conscious of the way that I'm holding whatever this is, and I think that's it's really easy for us to focus energy on what our partner isn't doing and where they're falling
right,
short, and,
right,
I think the thing is, like, whatever I focus on expands, and what I
right.
appreciate
Amen.
appreciates, right? So if I focus on where my partner is doing things really well and I give them that positive reinforcement, I promise you they will start doing more of that thing because all of us sort of rise to the expectations that others have of us, and so if we're giving our partner all of this negative reinforcement, it's like, well, if that's who I am, then I guess that's who I'll be to you, right? And it just feels really like a defeating energy,
Mm,
deflating maybe, right? And if I'm giving my partner a lot of reinforcement for what they're doing well and a lot of gratitude, then all of a sudden it's like, oh, you like that? You want some more? Let me let me give you some more of that, right? And so it's yeah, I think I love what you're saying, and I think that there's a way of just like I don't know, it's like, how do I celebrate this thing as if I think I became so much better, honestly, of a couples therapist, Carrie Jack, when my marriage ended because changed form, because, before that, I didn't really think about this thing of like, this isn't promised, it's sacred. And if you think about
mm,
relationships as a sacred thing, then how do I meet this person every day with the energy I would want to bring to this if they weren't here tomorrow? And I promise it's an illusion that they will be here forever. I never would have thought that my husband and I wouldn't be in that form forever. Um,
mm.
but seeing that and knowing that has really led me to understand what a sacred gift it is to share your life with someone, you know what I mean?
Mm, well said. What I appreciate appreciates. Is that a Dene Logan original?
It's not. I don't
Oh,
know where that
that's
I feel like that
good.
was like a motivational speaker from the '70s, and I can't think of his
Uh,
name, but I would
I'm
give
gonna
him a
give
shout
you
out.
credit. I'm gonna give you credit, okay? Because I
Aw,
like it.
it's
What I
true
focus on
though.
expands. Yeah, no, it is so true. I always say you
Yeah.
focus on the solution manifests. You focus on the
Mm,
problem expands. But
that's
you say it
it.
way better than I did. And it
Wow.
isn't promised. It is sacred. I mean, I almost died from carbon monoxide poisoning in
Mm,
2022 at our ranch. I passed out unconscious, cracked my head open, was bleeding out. My dog saved my life. Long story short,
oh my
everyone
god.
has like these moments of like clarity. And that was one for me. And it's like, man, but we need a reminder sometimes that like we're gonna exit this meat suit into another form, whatever time that is for us, we don't know. So we might
That's
as well
right.
make the most of what we got right now. Focus on gratitude, focus on appreciating
Mm.
the things we have, pouring in to each other, sharing love and light. And I'm just grateful for you blessing us with your love and light and your wisdom, Dene. This has been awesome. I know people are probably like, all right, I might need to work with this Dene Logan, or I want to go to her retreat or check out her book at minimum. Where's the best place for people to find you online?
Thanks, Carrie Jack. Well, they can find me at my website, DenéLogan.com. And then I'm pretty active on social media at Dené.Logan. And yeah, I feel like everything you're saying is just so beautiful. And I'm like, I'm gonna like hunt you down and figure out a way to get men and women together on some of these
Yeah.
immersive retreats because I think we need a lot more. attempting to understand one another, across these gender lines, especially right now in this moment in history. So thank you for the work you're doing. I think your energy is just really, really beautiful and inspiring. It's great to meet you.
Thank you, Dene. Yeah, we'll have to get our crews together. We serve all high performing men. I know you serve high performing women and couples at that. So yeah, we'll have to talk about a collab in the future. Um, Before I let you go, I do
Mm,
like to put everyone through a rapid fire round. Um, just really, I ask random things and you answer
okay.
honestly. First thing that comes to mind. Are you ready, Dene?
I'm ready. Let's do it.
Okay, favorite food. Go.
Oh, mac and cheese.
Ooh, favorite movie.
Oh God. The color purple.
Favorite book.
I was gonna say, well, I'll say The Alchemist, and I'm gonna do two: The Alchemist and The Celestine Prophecy.
Nice. What's your spirit animal?
Oh, spirit animal. That's good. I maybe a horse. We'll do a horse. Yeah, they're intuitive
Yeah.
beings. We'll do a horse.
Best business advice.
Mm. Um, don't ever put anything in writing that you wouldn't want to be read back later, like out of context, and then
Mm,
put everything in writing when you need to cover your butt.
mm.
It's
Sound
just
sound wisdom.
that's
I'd
just
like
what a
to
boss
ask.
told me, and I
Yeah,
always put it in practice. Yeah.
that's good. What is a happy hustle hack for your health? Like a tip, a
Mm.
tool, a tactic that's uniquely Dene.
A happy hustle tool for my health.
Yeah.
I always say, and this was something I think was really solidified for me in 2020 when we were sort of all indoors, is I think every day we need to find some time to be still, and every day we need to find some time to move in some way. And that's just
Mm,
sort of like that's how I am at a baseline of feeling good. Like, so sometimes sitting in stillness, even if it's 5 minutes with myself and whatever that looks like, and then I gotta move in some way every day, like every day of my life.
amen to that. Happy hustle hack for your money. Something that you do to save or spend or invest
Oh my
wisely.
God, I'm not the one. Um, yeah, I think it's sleeping on things when I want things sometimes, especially, and
Uh-huh.
I'm not like the worst, but I like to Danae, if you really need it, you will still feel this way tomorrow. So you don't need to get it in this moment. Like I say in
Gotcha.
general, whatever needs to happen doesn't need to happen immediately.
Yeah, I hear that. Happy hustle hack for your spirituality, something you do to connect to a higher power.
Mm. Again, that back to being in stillness, but I
Yep.
really love and just, like meditation can be so many things. I hike a lot here and I feel really close to God's spirit when I'm out in nature in any
Mm,
way. And then I love to bring like the magic and the mysticism in ways that I find fun. And that can be like oracle decks and tarot and things like that. And so those are something that I've really incorporated into my spiritual life over the last few years. And I love it.
nice. I dig it. So my wife's all about that too.
Oh, I
Three
feel like
things you're
Steph
most,
and I would vibe.
yeah, I know you guys need to connect. All right. Three things you're most grateful for today.
Gosh, my kiddo, that beautiful little boy, my health, and just the opportunity to do things like this that I love, like connecting with like-minded seekers. It's like my favorite. I feel so grateful.
Awesome. And if you had a billboard for the world to see with your last piece of content on there, what does that
Mm.
billboard read, Dene?
It's something that I did steal from one of my favorite spiritual teachers, Wayne Dyer, and he
Mm.
said the mantra of the lower self is "I need more." The mantra of the higher self is "How do I serve?"
Mm, well said. Crush that rapid fire round, Danae. And I just want to take a moment to acknowledge you again for sharing your
Mm,
love, your light, your wisdom, your relationship truths, your vulnerability,
mm.
the understanding of the masculine and feminine energy. I feel like we covered a lot of ground here, and
We
it was
did.
awesome to hear your insights and your
Mm,
truth and just the wisdom. I know you've been in the trenches with many a couples and many people, and it's just awesome to dive deep down this rabbit hole because love is such a pivotal piece of happy hustling. So thank you
mm.
so much. I really appreciate you and your time.
Oh my gosh, such a gift to meet you. Thank you so much for your time and for having me, Carrie Jack.
Yeah. Okay, remind some people again, where's the best place to connect online and where you're most active, you said?
Yeah, so I'm DenéLogan.com is my website, and on social media, I'm Dené.Logan, and my book is called Sovereign Love: A Guide to Healing Relationships by Reclaiming the Masculine and Feminine Within.
Love it. And your podcast too, right? Cheaper Than Therapy podcast, which is a great name, by the way.
Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, we've been on a little bit of a hiatus, but I have a podcast called Cheaper Than Therapy and another one that's just me called What's My 100%. So, yeah, there's lots of places to hear me gab
There you
if you're
go. There you
interested.
go.
Yeah.
Love it. Well, I appreciate you. Go ahead, if you can, tie a bow on everything we talked about. Give the people just a
Mm.
rallying cry to arms to go out there and foster more love and connection.
Yeah, I think I love so much of what you said because it's what I truly believed. I think being the love that I want to experience and have in my life is the quickest way to have that love in my life. So, how do I bring the focus back to what is within my control, which is
Mm,
always myself?
mm. Well said. If you want a 10, you got to be a 10. That's the happy hustle ethos. I love it. Okay, final question I ask all my guests today is what
Mm.
does happy hustling mean to you?
What does happy hustling mean to me? I think for me, that happy hustling is just really trusting that whatever is meant for me will not miss me. So as long as I'm in alignment with following my bliss, normally everything that I'm meant to experience comes to fruition. So it's like worrying less and trusting more.
Mm. Mic drop. Dene Logan, y'all. Thank you for watching and listening. We are out. Peace and love, everybody.